The UDL in 15 Minutes logo, a circle around the words UDL in blue, in yellow, and 15 Min in red, followed by a black and white image of Anne and Chantill taking a selfie. Anne has shoulder-length blonde, wavy hair, and Chantill has brown, shoulder-length, curly hair. Hello, and welcome to UDL in 15 Minutes, where educators discuss their experiences with UDL. I'm Louie Lord Nelson, UDL author and leader. Today, I'm talking with Anne Bishop and Chantill Lopez, co-owners of the Embodied Business Institute. Today, they are going to share how UDL and the science of the nervous system work together to support the self-regulation of teachers and students. Welcome to you both. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so glad to be here too.
Thank you both. I think listeners will be really interested in today's conversation because you're applying UDL outside of the classroom, but also inside the classroom. But before we go to that part of the conversation, can you both share your backgrounds and how they're relative to UDL and how you came to know UDL?
Absolutely. My voice here is Anne, and I first came involved with UDL way back in 2010 and 2011 when I received my graduate degree in mind, brain, and education at the Harvard Graduate School for Education. And during that time, Dr. David Rose was teaching a course, and of course, his course was Universal Design for Learning. And so that's when I was first exposed to it as a student. And then I worked for an organization called CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology. And that was a wonderful experience. A little bit more about me is I've actually never taught in a classic classroom model. I have always actually taught Pilates, and I actually have taught in the classroom model. I did teach cadaver dissection at San Francisco State University to adult learners getting their degrees in nursing and such. But I've mainly really taught people movement throughout my life. And I was very attracted to teaching people movement who was in pain. And I happen to teach Pilates. And I also have taught teacher training, taught people to become teacher trainers. So I've had probably a little bit more experience, obviously, within adult education and then also teaching more continuing education. But what I loved about blending UDL to movement is I immediately saw how, specifically within the world of Pilates, this concept of universal design was something. When I first realized, I think the creator, Joseph Pilates, actually was quite almost doing some of those models intuitively. So that's where I first started it, was applying UDL into the studio. And then I began to share the work with teachers. And I met Chantill briefly back in 2002. And then after my time at graduate school, we met and we began the Embodied Business Institute formally in 2016.
Awesome. Thank you. And you, Chantill. Chantill squatting down and gently holding a small potted succulent.
Yeah, well, I was definitely exposed to the explicit concept of UDL through Anne. When she came back from Harvard, we had met, that was 2011, I think she said. And I matriculate from the world of movement education. I've been a movement educator for 25 years. My formal background is in writing. I was a journalist for some years before I moved into being a movement educator. When Anne came back, I remember from Harvard, I had started an educational company called Skillful Teaching. I had moved through my work of teaching movement, ranging primarily from Pilates, but into yoga and also other somatic methodologies. And I had started teaching functional anatomy because we were also hosting teacher training in the studio that I owned, and Anne and I lived in the same community. We met at a coffee shop and we started talking because she had also created a new educational company of her own called Body Brain Connect. And I felt for all of the years I've been an educator, compelled by teaching the whole person. And In the movement world, we often hold at the top of our priority list teaching to the body in front of us. And I think intuitively I just always knew that there was something more than just teaching the body, and I wanted to really attend to the whole person, but also the whole relationship between myself, within the other person, and between us. And so when Anne and I sat down and we were talking about, I had developed skillful teaching, I had developed a year-long mentorship, I was deeply studying education from a variety of perspectives. I was just beginning to kind of dabble in what I didn't even know then was the nervous system's impact on behavior and change. And we were in beautiful collaboration in a kind of casual way for many years, for about 5 years. And then we started this project, which is now the Embodied Business Institute. And as we went along, I just was always so appreciative and taken by the UDL concepts. And it wasn't even until later that I actually knew what that was or what that meant. But in reflection, I know that that's what Anne was talking about now and what she was sharing. And what I always tell people is I have applied the framework in so many different ways, not only to teaching my clients, but to developing curriculum, because I've been developing curriculum for about 15 years in a variety of ways. And I was really pleasantly surprised to see that I was already doing many of the things that UDL really is helping us foster. And then as I get to know it, I could see the value in it, and I would apply it as a writer. I've written a lot, and I've written a couple of books. And I'm also a podcaster of many, many years. And so I was using the framework in all of these different ways. And I thought, just what an incredible, beautiful framework. And I am also, I feel like a very intuitive teacher. I really value the relationship, but I also want to always like know why things are happening and the science behind UDL and the science behind the nervous system work has always been completely enthralling to me. And it really just brings it all together. And so that's my experience and exposure to UDL. So thanks to Anne for that.
The homepage of the Embodied Business Institutes with a photo of Anne and Chantill standing in front of a graffitied wall and smiling. Lovely. Thank you both. Thank you. So, I want to start talking about the Embodied Business Institute, your website. And for listeners, their link is with the podcast on my website. But the Embodied Business Institute says, quote, "We help growth-minded entrepreneurs, leaders, and educators dedicated to creating change for themselves and their clients leverage the latest research on brain-based learning, motivation, motivation science, and the nervous system to build more powerful and sustainable businesses based on transformation inside and out. So making money and meaning with ease is possible at every stage of the game." End quote. So you're bringing brain-based learning, motivation science, and information about the nervous system to your audience to help them establish or grow their business. And UDL is in the middle of that. So I know that's huge. And I'm going to ask you to break that down. I don't know how you're going to do it easily, but I've just lobbed it to you. There you go.
All right. Woohoo, we can do this. So, one of the things that Chantel and I began as a connection is our love of teaching. And, we chose careers that had a lot of meaning. We deeply love to work and to teach people movement and really to teach people about their bodies. And whether that was more self reflective or perception, it is something that we truly love. And, as we evolve through our careers, we get other interests. And so, one of the other interests that I had over many years has been, how do you really educate at a high level? And that's really where universal design for learning comes in. And Chantil really has the expertise in our business of the nervous system. And we lean deeply on the science of the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. And the other thing that we share in common is that we've always been very entrepreneurial. And we've both have had multiple businesses in many different ways. And we not only see how universal design for learning can support children or adults in a learning environment, but also how it can support you as an entrepreneur. We have used UDL concepts within our sales, within our marketing, within, of course, any of the curriculum that we design and sell, or any of the curriculum that we support other people in designing and creating. And so one of the things that we find that's so powerful about bringing this all together is that it allows us not to sort of pigeonhole ourselves into doing one thing or the other if you're a highly creative person. And so we find a lot of these strengths come together.
Beautiful. So it allows you to stay really broad and, like you said, not pigeonhole yourself within any aspect of the business. Because I think as business owners, we all have what we're strong at doing, and there are other areas where maybe we're not as strong. So it sounds like, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but that the application of UDL is not only helping you all design your aspects, the multiple aspects of the business, but it also helps you design what you're going to offer to others to help them think through design of their business and what they're doing. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Chantill and Anne standing at a whiteboard and laughing.
Yeah, and I would just add too, I mean, from my perspective, so we have created a system that reflects our business, and UDL is a major pillar. We have three pillars of our business, and really it falls into one primary pillar. And what I love about it is we're so deeply dedicated to transformation, both for ourselves and for the people who are offering education, but then to also translate and transfer that to the people we are touching and reaching, and to support our entrepreneurs and coaches and leaders, and educators in doing the same. UDL has become like a language that we just speak, and we speak it through all of the aspects of our business. And I think that framework allows us to take things that can be incredibly complex and sometimes overwhelming and say, well, if you look at it through this lens, through this system, which of course Anne and I love, it's so nerdy and so science-based and it's about the brain, is so meaningful and yet offers such a level of succinctness and clarity that they have guidelines that they can follow. They don't have to make it up as they go. They don't have to be floating around in endless questions about how to do something. So at least from my perspective, the UDL is a massive anchor in everything that we do, both from the business perspective and the education perspective, because the roots and heart of our business is teaching, is education, and we want to make money doing it, and we want to serve doing it, and we want to help other people to do the same.
Fabulous. So, Chantel, that's the perfect way for us to segue toward the end of this part one of the podcast, because you really have talked about how UDL is the anchor. It's the anchor for your business, and it also is an anchor for everything else you deliver. So, what we'll do is we'll bring this one to a close. And then for folks who are listening, you know that this next podcast coming up, you're going to get more of their how. So, for this podcast, Chantill and Anne, I want to say thank you so much. And everyone just hang on, because you're going to get to hear part two really soon. Screen captures of the UDLapproach.com, followed by the UDL in 15 minutes logo. So for those listening to this podcast, you can find supplemental materials like an image montage with closed captioning, that montage with audio descriptions, a transcript, and an associated blog at my website, theudlapproach.com/podcasts. And finally, if you have a story to share about the UDL implementation for UDL in 15 minutes, you can contact me through theudlapproach.com. And thanks to everyone for your work in revolutionizing education through UDL and making it our goal to develop expert learners.